I'm making this planter out of cedar fence pickets because they're cheap, and my first step is planing them down to a 1/2 inch. This is optional though, just keep in mind some measurements later on will need to be adjusted if you're not using 1/2 inch. Next I rip out all of the pickets to 2.5 inch strips. I chose this size purely for aesthetic reasons. I have to figure out my bucket diameter, and I came up with 9 1/4. And in case you're wondering, this is a 2-gallon bucket, not a 5. I then cut 8 leg pieces at 2 feet. You can adjust this if you want the planter taller or shorter. Next I cut out 10 short slats at 9 1/4, which is the bucket diameter. And last for the main body, I cut out 6 long slats at 30 3/4, which is 3 times the bucket diameter plus 6 times the board thickness. Before assembly, I mark off 1/2 inch offsets on all of the legs. This is the board thickness, and this is just to help line up all of the slats before gluing and stapling them in place. I start with the sides, nailing 3 short slats to the legs, making sure to use exterior rated glue, and I'm actually using 18 gauge staples rather than brad nails to add extra strength. I then do the same for the front and back, but this time I'm using long slats, once again using 3 on each side. Now to assemble the main body, I'm just gluing and stapling all 4 pieces together. The trick here is the sides go in between the front and back, so the short slats, they were cut to the bucket width, and this way the short slats are in between the long slats. An added benefit here, besides measurements for fitting the sides in between the front and back, you don't see the legs or the slats of the side when you're looking at the planter from the front or back. I take the remaining 4 short slats and I add them in the middle to help hold the buckets, but also extra bracing in the middle of the planter. And because they're the same width as the bucket, I can use them as spacers to get one on either side to start off. Once I have one in place on either side, I'm going to take the remaining 2 and I'm just doubling up in the middle. And the measurements should equal out, so each square in the middle here is 9 1/4. And next I'm moving on to the border. I'm cutting out 2 long border pieces at 32 3/4, which is the planter width plus 2 times the board thickness. And then I cut out 2 short border pieces at 11 1/4, which are merely the planter depth. Attaching the border pieces is incredibly easy. I'm just gluing and stapling these in place, just like the rest of the planter build. But I start with the short pieces because these are supposed to be flush on the front and back of the legs. After the short pieces are attached, I move on to the longer border pieces, and you can see here how it overlaps the sides, just like the rest of the planter. This planter is similar to my last 2 builds, and if you haven't seen those, I'll have links in the description, but the idea here is making a planter that handles multiple buckets for individual items, but still has a good look to it, where it doesn't look like a frame with a bunch of buckets.